Hello and welcome to another episode of the Troy Francis podcast with me, Troy Francis. It is September now. We are on, what is it, September the 9th? I think it might be September the 9th. And I am sitting in London town. Sorry, it's actually the 8th. Apologies, it's September the 8th. And I'm sitting in London town in my world-class podcast studio and, of course, live streaming studio for YouTube, putting out another episode for you guys because that's the kind of guy I am, really. I just like to give the whole time. And so here we are with another podcast. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, hang on a minute, it's Tuesday, and normally the podcast comes out on Monday. And yes, that is true. That has been the format for a long time, actually. I've been putting out the podcast on a Monday for many years now, actually. And I'll come on to that in a moment because I know the back episodes have vanished off iTunes just recently. But what I'm going to trial for the moment is doing this on a Tuesday instead and putting it out on YouTube because I'm going to be going live Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays on YouTube for the time being. I'm going to step up my live appearances on YouTube, if you like, and Monday, Wednesday, Friday seems a pretty good schedule to do them on. So I'm going to be going live at 11:30 a.m. EST, which is 4:30 p.m. in the UK if you're based in the UK. But it's 11:30 a.m. EST, which is the same time, by the way, that Rule Zero goes live on a Saturday. So I'll be going live at that time, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. For the foreseeable, with a live show, and it's going to be all based around the idea of freedom for guys primarily, because that's really who my audience is, and freedom in terms of dating and the dating marketplace for sure, because we all want the freedom of opportunities, freedom of ability to date who we want to date, have the kind of romantic sexual life that we want to have, but also freedom in terms of some other things as well, like business, or at least career and the kind of work that you do. You know, are you actually free in terms of your livelihood, the way that you make a living? Are you free in terms of where you live, where you are based? Are you free in terms of your social life, in terms of the people that you hang around with or are able to hang around with? Are you enjoying freedom in all of these different areas of your life? And if you're not, then what are you going to do about it? Because for me, freedom is the highest aspiration I think that anybody can have. And of course, this year, what with COVID and with the lockdown and everything else, we've seen how easily freedoms that we are used to, that we just take for granted, can and have been taken away from us. Now, how right or wrong you think that is a separate issue, but nevertheless, freedoms like the freedom to go out at one point was denied us largely. Freedom to go and mix with other people was taken away. Freedom to travel was taken away, and it is still really not there in the way that it was last year. I can travel to some countries, but I can't travel to all countries by any means, not in the way that I could in 2019. So freedoms that we were used to have been taken away. And obviously, I think we're all mindful of this now more than ever. And so I'm just going to be talking about those different issues. Because look, in the end, if you want to have a life as a guy who is going out there and getting what he wants, in terms of dating, but also in terms of success, in terms of building a business, in terms of living the kind of life that you want to live, not the life you think you should, then freedom really has got to be at the heart of all of that. And freedom, in the end, comes down to options, really, because the more options that you have, the freer that you are. So I'm going to be talking vaguely around those themes. I mean, obviously an emphasis on the dating game stuff, because I know that's why you come to my stuff primarily, but also linking in a few of those other things as well. We'll get some guests in. We'll talk to guys who sort of created the kind of life that they want to live. And yeah, we'll take it from there really, and we'll see how things go. But I'm looking forward to going live and just chatting with you guys, not face to face exactly, but you know what I mean, directly a little bit more via the medium of live stream. And as before, I would encourage you, any questions that you've got really about anything, any of the topics that I've mentioned, do come along to the shows with those questions, because I want to make it as interactive as possible. I don't just want it to be me talking for 90 minutes. I want it to really be led by you guys, because in the end, you are my audience and I want to make it as useful to you as you possibly can. But we kicked off yesterday, and you can obviously watch the live stream on my YouTube channel. And please do subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. We kicked off yesterday. Now, I was talking about the book How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World by Harry Browne, which is a fantastic book that I was alerted to, I guess, about a year or 2 years ago by Tom Torero, who I think heard about it through somebody who follows him. And it's just a really great book about libertarianism, really, about living for yourself and not buying into, you know, societal programming, not buying into the outmoded and often not useful ideas that society will attempt to curtail us with, or curtail our actions with. So all of that stuff I find really fascinating. It's intimately linked with the dating stuff, because the way that you live your life doesn't just affect one element of that life, it affects all elements of it. So all these things are interconnected. And yeah, it's really interesting to be sort of getting into that stuff, talking through that stuff, etc., etc., etc. But obviously with an emphasis on the dating scene, dating advice, dating tips, relationship tips, etc., as always. So anyway, with all of that being said, I wanted to just go into a topic today, which is living a balanced life and the importance of living a balanced life. And also, to some extent, the pros and cons of living a balanced life as well. Because although on the surface, the idea that you should live a balanced life sounds great, it sounds like the kind of thing that you should 100% aspire to. At the same time, there are occasions when not being in balance is also beneficial to you, particularly if you want to experience something extraordinary. Okay, you know, balance tends to be the hallmark of people who live fairly unremarkable lives, let's say. And there's nothing wrong with that, okay? There's nothing wrong with seeking balance in your life. And I believe that probably the majority of the time you should, to be honest. But by the same token, there is also an argument for having periods of time where things are a little bit out of balance, because you are perhaps concentrating more on a different side of things, like game, like, you know, your business, that your novel that you're working on, whatever it is. And that's absolutely fine. I suppose the key really, then there's another meta level of balance, in a sense, because you want to then have balance between those times when you're not balanced and those times when, in fact, you are balanced. Okay, so I basically thought of this topic because when you're creating content about this kind of stuff, that is to say dating, girls, the dating marketplace and all of that, a lot of the time you'll get guys coming at you with criticisms. Well, there are legion criticisms, but one of the many criticisms that guys will come at you with is that, you know, is that all you're about, bro? Is this dating stuff really all you're interested in? Is there nothing else going on in your life that you have to talk about this stuff the whole time? And of course, the answer to that question is no, it's absolutely not the only thing that I or anybody else really has got going on in their lives. I mean, any other dating coach or content creator that you can think of, and I've met a lot of them, remember, and I've hung out with them and I'm friends with them. You know, dating and game is not the only thing that they have in their lives. It may well be a very major part of their lives, but none of them really have it as being the only thing. And I think if you did have it as being the only thing, you would be in a very bad way. You wouldn't be living a healthy life, if you like. Now, that's not to say that you can't have dating game, the dating marketplace, as being your principal interest for periods of time. But most of the guys that I know, they do other things. And the reason, and this is the criticism that gets directed at dating coaches online is disingenuous, because you'll get these guys going, look, all he talks about is girls and, dating and blah, blah, blah. What a shallow individual. He's got nothing else in his life except for this nonsense. And why don't you man up and, become interested in more important things instead? And of course, that criticism is disingenuous, because the people making that criticism know full well that the dating content creator is putting out a lot of content about dating because that's the line of business that he's in. It's a bit like saying to British Telecom, why don't you just stop talking about this telephone stuff, this broadband internet stuff? Isn't it time you grew out of that and moved on to something else instead? Or like saying to, I don't know, like a fashion designer, isn't it time you sort of grew out of this fashion stuff? Haven't you got anything else going on in your life apart from making these like clothes? It's a nonsensical challenge, because if you have a business based around a particular topic, then of course, you're going to spend the majority of your time talking about that particular topic publicly. But that's not to say that privately, behind closed doors, or even a bit publicly as well, you haven't got other issues. And this is why, on Twitter particularly, I talk about dating and some game techniques and things like that, but I also talk about a lot of other things as well. I've recently been tweeting a lot about Shakespeare and the Shakespeare plays that I've been reading. Okay, and that's really got nothing to do with the dating marketplace or game. It could do. You could drop it in when you are making an approach, depending on the type of girl that you're interacting with or whatever. But, that's really got nothing to do with the dating stuff. But I talk about it because I do have other interests in my life. I'm not just this one-trick pony who's only into this one particular thing. And, the truth of the matter is that I have a girlfriend and we hang out a lot together and have a great time together. And, I am not in the place that I was 5 years ago, for example, but that's not to say that I don't still have a lot of insight into this area, because for a start, I've got like over 15 years worth of experience of very hardcore gaming, if you like. And secondly, I'm in a relationship, so that's one thing. I have insight from that. And also I've got eyes and ears and the ability to observe other people around me. And so, I've got plenty to bring to the party. But at the same time, dating in game is not the only thing in my life by any means. Now, there have been times, though, when it was pretty much the only thing in my life. I think back to in my earlier 30s, for example. I was doing a job. I was also reading and doing writing. So I've always had these other external interests. I was also going to the gym and socializing with friends and things like this. But a lot of my time was dedicated to the dating scene. It was dedicated to perfecting this art and craft, if you like, of getting better at this stuff. There were times when I was going out and doing daytime approach every day. Literally every day of the week. There were times before that when I was going to nightclubs every night of the week, literally every night. And if not a nightclub, at least a bar. And I was going and interacting with people, socializing, meeting different women, and so on. And that was a very big part of my life for a really long time. And it's really because I've had those experiences that I believe that I am qualified to talk about this stuff. People will come at you and be like, well, why should, what do you know about it? Why can you talk about it? It's like, well, because, I am somebody with a very addictive personality, and that is demonstrated by the fact that I ended up having a big problem with alcohol, and I stopped drinking alcohol. I stopped using other substances and things like that, because I'm one of those people who I'm either going at 0 or I'm going at 120 miles an hour. There's no sort of like moderation for me, and that can be good, and that can also be bad. And it can be good because it means that I am I can be quite obsessive about doing things, about chasing things, about working on things. And in the past, that obsessiveness has been applied to working on game, to going out and socializing and trying things time and time and time again and again, and suffering, multiple rejections and getting some successes, and starting to piece together what appears to work for me and what very much doesn't work. And as a result of doing that very obsessively over a long period of time, I've been able to, I suppose, create content about it. I've been able to write books about my experiences and articles about my experiences, and latterly create videos and podcasts focusing on these things. And I've been able to draw out lessons which I know to be helpful to other guys, because I get great feedback. I get feedback from guys who said, "Oh, you said this and it really helped me. You said this, it made me think of it in a different way." So, all I've ever done really is shared my experiences and said, "Look, in my experience, doing this works well," or "In my experience, doing this is not such a good idea and you probably shouldn't do that." And as I say, the fact that I've had that obsessive period, being quite unbalanced with this stuff, has allowed me to get to that point where I've got a range of experiences, reference experiences, if you like, that I can draw on to refer back to and to talk about. So, in that sense, being out of balance isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world, because I think it's fair to say, I've been out of balance many times in my life. I've been out of balance with the use of alcohol and party drugs and things like this. And I've also been out of balance in terms of my preoccupation with the dating scene. And as some of you listening to this probably very well know, dating and girls and all of that stuff can become very, very compulsive. And this is whether you're doing day game, or you are on dating apps and you're swiping on dating apps, or whether you're doing nighttime game, or whether you're doing a combination of all three, which is what I always recommend. It can become very, very compulsive because the rewards are so great. And people will quibble with that and say, "No, the rewards aren't great. You just end up with a low quality woman, and who wants that?" But putting that to one side, the sexual rewards, particularly when you're young, particularly when you're filled with testosterone and life and all of that stuff, the apparent sexual reward that you potentially can get from all of this stuff appears to you so great that you will willingly throw pretty much everything out of balance in order to chase after it for a period of time. And this is what a lot of guys end up doing in their 20s and maybe into their 30s as well. And it's what I certainly did, And before learning about this stuff in more detail, before, reading about what became known as game and dating techniques and all these kinds of things and some of the psychology behind it, I was untutored. But I was going to the club every night, and I was talking to lots of different people, lots of different girls, and some of those would like me because of the way I looked, or because of my demeanor, or the way that I came across, or whatever. And I would end up, having experiences with those girls. But it was very, very untutored. It wasn't structured in any way, and so I would strike out a lot. I would get a lot of rejections. I would mess things up that in hindsight probably could have been successful if I'd have known just a couple of little psychological facts that I know now. Alternatively, there are things that perhaps I spent too much time on that I probably should have just, left for, this clearly isn't going to come off. So mistakes were made in the past, in that period of unbalance that I'm describing, without a doubt. But the important thing is that just by amassing the sheer volume of experiences that I've had, it's given me an overview of this stuff, which has been incredibly useful in terms of moving forward and trying to help other guys and, writing about it for my own creative satisfaction as well. So that period of unbalance, I don't in any sense regret it. And here's the thing, right, as well. I think people's lives are not always linear. I mean, they can be linear, but I know plenty of people who have seen great ups and downs in their lives in terms of balance versus unbalance. And you think about entrepreneurs. I mean, I know people who have been very, very successful in business and in accruing wealth and property and all of these different things. And then, because of some chain of events, they've gone on and lost all of it. And and later in life as well, 30s, 40s, whatever, they've lost everything. And then they've had to start again. They've gone back down to the bottom and they've had to start again. And they have started again. And guess what? They've gone on to be really successful again. And then something else has happened. And then, the thing is that life it's a bit of a stormy journey for all of us. Stuff happens and it's all very well, to be on Twitter saying, yes, just have your cold showers every morning and do your semen retention and lift and all of that. And you will see linear growth. And if you don't, you're a failure and you should banish yourself from the internet and just crush it 23 hours a day until you start making bank. It's a very naive way of looking at life and success, really, because when you've been around a lot longer, you see that, yes, there are people who have linear success. They just start doing something, they work hard at it, suddenly they see a load of success, and then they just stay successful and that's it. I mean, that does happen, but more often than not, people see ups and downs. And that is not anything to be afraid of. I mean, it's not something you want to welcome necessarily, but it's not something to be afraid or to be critical of yourself for, because that's just the way things go. I mean, stuff happens in life. People people get ill, people face personal situations that throw them off course. Lots and lots of different things happen, and you've got to be kind to yourself as well. But what I'm coming around to saying with all of this is that depending on where you are on that journey, you might make the calculated decision to throw yourself into imbalance for a period of time. Like, for example, say you lose your job, and that's unfortunately happening to people at the moment as a result of the pandemic and lockdowns and so on. If you lose your job and you are casting around for income and you've got to make some money in order to pay the rent, the mortgage, whatever, then it would be absurd to start spending a lot of time working on your game at that point. It would be far better to sit at the computer and build your business or work on your hustle or at least look for another job. It would be far better to spend 15 hours a day doing that rather than going, right, well, how do I approach a girl in a coffee shop? I think I'll spend time on the internet finding out. It kind of like, it's a no-brainer, isn't it, really? In a situation like that, you are going to immerse yourself in the most important thing, which is work, which is finding new work or creating an income for yourself. But the same thing might be said of game at other times. If you have been in a long-term relationship or a marriage, and then that relationship or marriage comes to an end, and, you have no sources of romantic interest or intimacy or affection, then it makes, but your income is stable and you've got things worked out as far as those other aspects are concerned, then it might make sense for you to immerse yourself in some kind of game, some kind of dating process for a period of time. because that part of your life is really important as well. You know, it's not, you can't just say, well, work is important, fitness is important, and sex and love is not important at all, because that's just not true. You know, for most normal functioning human beings, they need, or at least it's highly desirable to have those components with it as a part of their life. So it might make sense for you to throw your life out of balance for a period of time in order to focus on dating, on getting better with socializing, with interacting with women. Another thing is fitness. You know, if you are massively out of shape, if you put on the old, lockdown couple of stone or whatever, then it would make sense for you to throw your life into a state of imbalance for a period of time to work on your fitness. You know, these things are pretty obvious, I think, but it's worth restating. So the point that I'm making here really with all of this is that yes, on a normal practical level, on a normal day-to-day level, all things being equal, balance is very good. You know, you don't want to be somebody who is just obsessed with dating and sex and all of these things 24 hours a day. I mean, that is just not a place that you want to be in. You know, you want to have other interests. And most importantly, as we always say, you need to have a mission that is more important than any of that stuff anyway. So, you know, whether it's writing, whether it's building your business, whether it is becoming a politician or a sports person or a musician or, you know, being a florist or whatever it is, you've got to have something else anyway, right? So under normal circumstances, yes, there should be balance for sure. But there is also value in imbalance when something needs to be attended to, when you need to have a greater focus on a particular thing. And remember that, as has been said before, people who are regarded as geniuses, or genii, if that's the word, people who get really great at something tend to have been pretty imbalanced in their pursuit of that thing. I mean, Elon Musk doesn't seem like the most balanced character, okay? And yet he is where he is. So bear that in mind, you know? Bear that in mind. Just balance it sounds good, but it's not always going to take you to the highest heights. But at the same time, prolonged imbalance, and I can tell you this from personal experience, is not a good thing either. So in summary, you've got to have balance between your balance and your imbalance, but recognizing at the same time that both of them can be useful in their own ways. All right, look, I'm going to leave it there for now because I've got to go out and do some other work in the afternoon because I'm being very balanced. But if you're watching this on YouTube, please do hit subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the notifications bell. Really helps me to build up my audience and to keep putting out the free, valuable content for you. I'm aware that a lot of the old podcasts have gone down off of iTunes and SoundCloud. I'm going to try to sort that out. That is just a small error. I hope to be able to sort that out, so bear with me on that. But yeah, I'm looking into that now. Aside from that, get on my free daily email list. There is a link in the description below. And if you want to read about my experiences in dating in the dating marketplace and the advice that I give as a result of those experiences that I share with you, then Renegade Dating Blueprint is my collection of 11 books. You can get it for just $39. And again, there is a link to that below. So, next podcast will be next Tuesday. I'm going live this week on YouTube, Wednesday and Friday at 11:30 a.m. EST, 4:30 p.m. UK time, GMT. So I look forward to joining you there and bring your questions with you. Okay, bye-bye.